Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Sitcom Showdown. Who'd have ever thought we'd get this far, Steve?
Oh, we've come so far.
It must be about 5 or 6 years, I think.
Yeah, quite a long time. Plugging away at it.
Yes, we might reach episode 100.
Yep. Thanks to everyone for tuning in as well. On YouTube or just downloading directly.
It's nice. It helps keep us going.
Yep.
It's my turn this time around, Steve.
Yes, what have you got?
I've got Black Books, an episode of Black Books which is called Bllood. Have you got any thoughts before I tell people what Black Books is if the listener hasn't heard of Black Books before?
No. I think we've done one before, haven't we?
Yeah, we certainly have, and I'm about to tell you all about that in a minute. Oh, yes. Well, Black Books was a sitcom that ran on Channel 4 in the UK for 3 series between the years 2000 and 2004. And the creators were its star, Dylan Moran, who I think will forever be known as Bernard Black, no matter what he does from now on.
Yep.
Anyway, along with writer Graham Linehan, but it also had a lot of writing talent, including Arthur Matthews, who of course was also from Father Ted, and the very cool Kevin Cecil.
Now, I'm interested in this because I noticed that Graham Linehan didn't actually have a hand in this episode.
No, he did not. So this episode, as I said, called Bllood, was the 10th episode of Black Books overall, but it was the 4th episode of Series 2. And it wasn't written at all by Graham Linehan or Arthur Matthews. This is all Kevin Cecil, Andy Riley and Dylan Moran. And it's totally mad.
The episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't set it apart from other
No, it doesn't.
Black Books episodes.
I think you've just put your finger on something about how they're such a good writing team, so to speak, is that, you know what I mean? That it's consistently mad all the way through the series, no matter who the writers are. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, this particular episode was broadcast on the 22nd of March 2002. So basically, it's just turned 20.
Yeah, so this puts it after Father Ted, but before the IT crowd. Is that
I'm going to say so, yeah. I know that there's experts listening out there who are just shaking their heads at us and just going, you call yourselves appreciators of sitcoms.
And of course, well,
it's your game.
Definitely know it's before Count Arthur.
Oh, yeah, totally. Black Books as a sitcom did win BAFTAs though, Steve. Well, you've probably mentioned this when you covered this sitcom way back, but it won BAFTAs for Best Situation Comedy in 2001 and 2005. Anyway, I'll describe the general premise of Black Books in a moment, but the elevator pitch for this episode, Bllood, is, Steve, Manny tries to force Bernard to reinvent the shop as a service-friendly, hip and trendy cafe bookshop, which we know is never going to fly. But that escalates into becoming an upscale restaurant. Now, meanwhile, Fran's been using the genealogy books recommended at the information point by Manny, to research her family history. And she uncovers these cousins from Eastern Europe, which they state in the show are third cousins. Anyway, she meets them living locally, but of course that goes badly. And the shop is overrun by a horde of unseen carnivorous insectoids that Manny and Bernard have to destroy. But carnivorous insectoids. But as we'll find out, Manny does mention fur and a beak. So they're bird, mammal, insect, vermin.
Yes.
Somehow.
Obviously, there's been some kind of mutation going on there.
Yeah, like Davros's experiments in Genesis of the Daleks.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
So as a whole, Black Books, which I'm sure our dear listener is familiar with, is about 3 friends in a bookshop. Although sometimes I think describing Manny and Bernard as friends might be a bit of a stretch.
Yes, well, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
and they're also boss and employee.
True.
So there's that angle too.
Yeah.
And are they housemates as well?
Yep, they live in the shop. Bernard Black is the owner of Black Books. It's a small, shabby London bookshop. The show revolves around the lives of Bernard, his employee and housemate Manny, well anticipated, Steve, and their friend and former fellow shopkeeper, Fran. Now, Bernard's obviously a grouch. We all know this. He hates the outside world. He hates everyone in it. He just wants to be left alone. He wants less people in the shop, Steve.
Yep.
Anyway, he just wants to read books and chain smoke and drink. So he's got no interest in being a successful retailer at all. And Steve, you previously called Bernard the Basil Fawlty of bookshops, which I thought it still holds up. It's a wonderful...
It sounds so good, I'm going to claim it.
Yeah, well, you did come up with it. Bernard's best friend, Fran, who initially, she runs the shop next door, which was sort of a trendy gift shop. It was called Nifty Gifty. And I love that because it's always been one of my long-standing things to use the word nifty as often as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a beautiful American word.
You'll shoehorn it into any sentence you can.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, Fran's a nicer human being than Bernard by a long mile. But anyway, she shares his hobbies of smoking and drinking and judging people, which is cool. It's just that she's nicer about it, that's all. Now, I'm going to take a liberty and in a sitcom showdown first, Steve. Instead of telling us about the main cast and what else they've been in, I'm going to lace in the audio from your coverage of Sitcom Showdown in episode 15 of our podcast, which had much worse production value. Absolutely. So, dear listener, prepare yourself for shoddy production values as we take a trip back in time, and Steve will tell you about the main cast.
Famous stars, another interesting background. Well, Bernard is played by Dylan Moran, who is a stand-up comedian, and he's done some films, including Notting Hill. That's probably the most famous one. And Shaun of the Dead.
I don't remember him being in Shaun of the Dead.
No, neither do I.
Oh, okay.
But he's of the same generation as the rest of that gang. Wouldn't you say? Yep. Manny's played by Bill Bailey, who's also a stand-up comedian who uses music to great effect in his comedy. He's a gifted musician who has perfect pitch. What does that mean, Jeff?
It means that if you said, give us a G sharp, he'd be able to sing one perfectly without having a reference tone. You know, you wouldn't have to give him a C for him to know where he's at on the next one.
Yep. And if I hit a glockenspiel or something like that, he could tell me which note I was
hitting.
hitting.
Which note it was, yeah.
Handy. Fran is played by Tamsin Greig, and she's an actress who's worked a lot in radio, TV, theatre and cinema.
Now, we didn't mention Manny before, Steve. He was introduced in the first episode as this anxiety-plagued accountant who enters the bookshop seeking the little book of calm. Anyway, he's a nice, thoughtful, intelligent and cuddly optimist, I've described him as. And so he and Bernard are the odd couple, essentially. Fran sees that Manny is good for Bernard, though, and she tries to keep them together because they need to balance each other out, I think. Yes. Anyway, what's your background with Black Books, Steve?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. Did I see it on TV? Probably not. I'm thinking maybe on DVD. What do you reckon?
If you were to look at my notes here, you'd find it's virtually identical to what you're saying. So I can't remember how I came across this. It was 100% not from being broadcast. I didn't see it on the telly. So it would have been someone would have said, Jeff, you have to watch this.
Yep.
And lent me the DVDs. And so I've ended up with the box set, and you've got it.
I've got the box set of... I watched this episode on Netflix, so it's all over the joint.
Ooh, that's pretty handy. So I think it was just a word of mouth thing. You know, once you see it, you recommend it to people.
Absolutely.
So this show ranked 58th out of 100 in the BBC's, for Britain, obviously, best sitcom poll in 2004. 58's not a bad number. Like, to crack the top 100 is pretty good. But here's... Let me run this by you, Steve. Obviously, at 2004... the last series of this went out. It won a BAFTA for Best Situation Comedy the following year. I think it's a bit unfair that the poll was run in the same year they were at the height of their powers and appreciation, right? So if that poll was run today, where would it come?
Aged like a fine wine or a cheese or something like that.
Possibly.
They'd be sitting even higher.
Maybe.
If it was done now.
I reckon it still deserves its spot.
It's pretty iconic. I would have put it in the top 50.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I think I would too. Ooh. Well,
what do you think, listeners?
That's right. sitcomshowdown@gmail.com. Let's have a little clip, and then I'll come back with an expansive synopsis, Steve.
A little clippy poo?
Yeah.
I want to jump up and down on somebody who's trying to ruin my life.
Look, I can explain. I went to get paint, and I went to that big bookshop, you know, Saga Books. Well, they had coffee and places to sit and I thought what we really need is to be more like them. I walked in, and I instantly bought £114 worth of books, all because it was so nice in there. I mean, look at this, look, a novel by a 12-year-old Spaniard, an account of the Nazi space program.
This won't work!
A large print biography of Basil Brush. Actually, that's quite good.
No one needs sofas that eat you. No one needs information points.
Well, Fran did. She was looking for something to occupy her, so I suggested she check out her family tree. And I informed her of our new genealogy section.
Hey, right. If you trace it back, and yeah, I might be wrong about this, but I come from a very good line, and apparently I am Queen Victoria's uncle.
So we open with this brilliant exchange between Bernard and a customer. Now, this guy's trying to talk down the price of a book from £3 to £2, which is a hefty, in percentage terms, that's pretty hefty. Bernard rips him a new one with this masterclass of sarcasm. It's just beautiful. He's saying, oh, yes, I'm just profiteering. And what would I have done with that extra £1, Steve? I could add an acre to the grounds. And
there's all sorts of things you could do with it.
Build a wing in the British Gallery in his name. Anyway, this sets up another great scene later, which is like part 2 of this exchange. And we'll talk about that at the end. But after that fantastic opening, Manny announces he's off to the shops to buy paints because he wants to spruce up the shop. He says it needs doing. Bernard, of course, disagrees.
So this is not a response to the infestation that's going on?
I think it is, because then he says it needs doing because it's unhygienic in here and it's getting...
But how is paint going to rid the world of these insects?
Well, in order to paint... Let's go with Manny for a second on this one. In order to paint, you have to at least move some furniture around to expose some walls to do stuff, and then you have to do prep, which involves cleaning walls. And I suppose while you're there cleaning stuff, you might as well, it can't hurt.
You might find the nest.
Can't hoit. Yeah, the nest. And he does mention that, which I didn't put in my notes. But you're right about this pest problem that you've brought up, because we do hear this scurrying, right? Our little reptilian noises. And
they've got a scoreboard going, haven't they?
Yeah. It's great. And so, yes, this is where Manny reaches for his handy whip. And then you hear of the little creature. We're not doing it justice here. But he cracks it on the creature, and then he literally chalks this up on the tally board. Oh, man. And he comments something like they're building a nest again. So
I think this one put him in the lead, didn't it?
Yes, I think so. And he did the chalk strike on the board in such a jaunty, authoritative way.
Yep.
Oh, man, it was so good. Bill Bailey, dude. Oh, the thing I like here is that because they don't ever show you these creatures, it's up to your imagination, which is better than anything that, not only cheaper, but it's better than anything that CGI could come up with, I think.
Absolutely.
And it sets up a second running gag. So they're like a couple of minutes into this thing, and they've set up this customer exchange, which pays off later, and the multiple payoffs of this insect thing. Anyway, Manny exits, right, because he's off to get the paint, and Fran enters. Now, she's carrying this shopping bag full of junk, and she confides to Bernard that without her former career in Nifty Gifty, she's got, she's aimless, she's got nothing.
Yep.
And she's shopping because she's bored. Bernard thinks she's overstating it, right, because it's just a bag full of chocolate and magazines, but then Fran dumps these crispy new car keys on his desk.
Yep.
And she reveals that she's impulse bought a Vauxhall Astra, which down under, Steve-O, would be a what?
Well, I went down this rabbit hole tonight trying to find out if this corresponded to the Holden Astra.
Yeah.
And it looks like, well, it's a complicated genealogy.
Okay, yes.
It looks like there might have been a bit of crossover at some point, and there was something called there was another European one as well.
Oh, crikey.
The European Astra. And yeah, it's complicated. I just thought, I'm not even going to try and explain this. But yes, the Holden Astra was iconic, and I'm presuming the Vauxhall Astra was just as iconic. Just a modest little car.
Yeah, that's all you need in the big city. Are they in a big city? Is Black Book's in some sort of corner of London somewhere where people usually don't have cars? This is a culture I'm not familiar with. Except on TV, of course.
Yes.
It's just like everything I know about British history comes from Blackadder. Everything I know about the British transport industry comes from, well, I don't know.
On the buses?
Yeah. You'd think so, wouldn't you? All right, where are we, Steve? Okay, yeah, Bernard responds sympathetically, right, which is amazing, to Fran's fretting. But it's just a ruse because he says, right, I need to help you with your problems. To the pub. So they go to the pub. And he says, Manny, I need you to look after the shop until Manny gets back. Realises Manny's not there. And then he goes to, this sweet little old lady, tiny customer, who, as soon as he just says, look after the shop. As soon as they leave, the door shuts, and then this lady's locked in there. She can hear the scurrying of the insectoids.
But the funny thing is, he's taking her to the pub to talk to someone, but he's not intending to talk to Fran himself. He's gonna plonk her in front of the barman.
Yeah.
Or bar.
Oh no, the bar steward.
The bar steward.
The bar steward.
Whoever the bar steward is.
Yeah,
he's gonna talk to Fran, and he's gonna sit in the corner and smoke and drink wine.
I wish I'd known you were going to bring that up, because then we could have plugged the episode we did on Time Gentlemen, Please.
Oh, no, we'll leave that.
Check the Sitcom Showdown feed. Oh, come on now. All right. So anyway, we're up to scene 3 now. Are we? No, we're up to scene 2, Steve. Because this is a good one. Scene 2, external, no dialogue, right? So we see Manny is walking back to the shop, and he's carrying these 2 tins of paint, one in each hand, and we hear this beautifully jaunty acoustic guitar number playing.
Yep.
He's happily strolling along the pavement with a tin of paint in each hand. As I said, he encounters this street ad banner thing, and then another, and they're all angled in such a way as to guide Manny into this huge saga bookshop. And all we hear is the music, ringing of tills, and without having even broken stride, Manny exits the shop out of a different doorway further along the path, so the camera is moving smoothly along the street. He's carrying this massive bag of books in one hand and a huge coffee and muffin in the other. It's like a 2-litre coffee and a half a loaf of bread muffin.
You could feed a family of 4.
Easy.
On that muffin, easy.
Oh, man. And I've commented here, it's like a scene out of The Goodies, because it's all done in one single 30-second take. There's no dialogue, and it's funny as hell. And it's the absolute opposite of being in the shop with Bernard, It's a happy, fun time.
Yep.
So, scene 3, this is back in the Black Book shop sometime later. Now, Manny's obviously been in the shop for a while. Bernard comes back, having been in the pub with Fran. And he sees tables with customers drinking coffee and reading books, and he hears this pleasant classical music, and he double takes and says, sorry, wrong shop. Bernard turns heel, walks out, but then having checked the exterior, he walks back in again. He's very confused. And as he makes his way past this huge green couch, he shouts for Manny, and there's like a pause, and Bernard discovers Manny at a standing desk, which is called the information point.
Yep.
They start arguing about the changes that Manny's made. Meanwhile, though, a customer drops an absolute ton of money on some books and comments that because he'd spent all this time on their comfy couch and he's reading the books and he's had such a nice coffee, he thought he'd treat himself.
Yeah. It put him right in the mood to open up his wallet.
And he's totally proved Manny's point, this customer has. And so this gives Bernard pause, I think. Anyway, we find out here that Manny has got Fran into researching her family history, as you would have just heard in the clip. And this is to keep her occupied and stop her aimless spending. So, yes. We cut forward to sometime later in the shop. Now, Bernard's making this name tag for himself and putting little gold stars on it and sitting behind his usual desk/counter. Now, he looks up to see the big green couch eat a girl and her dad.
Yep.
In what I've called another bit of prop comedy worthy of The Goodies.
Yes, it's a nice sight gag.
Yeah. Poor old Bernard, he's totally bewildered, and he's also conflicted because he hates the pretentiousness and the customers, but he is developing a thing for seeing so many books being sold, and he's making tons of money, and there's just, from certain angles, right, where you see behind Bernard looking at his desk, he's just got all these pound notes everywhere, not pound notes, but some might be 20 quid notes and 27 quid notes if you watch Bottom and all that sort of stuff.
So what's he doing? He's not...
the till's probably full
There's
of
no
money.
security here.
No.
He's just randomly throwing notes behind him.
Yeah, it's just... Oh, no, I mean, the camera is behind Bernard, and you get a nice view of his desk.
Okay.
So his little desk is... Yeah, anyway.
Because I hadn't spotted that.
Oh. So Manny rushes over to Bernard, and he says, Bernard, put your thing on. And Bernard picks up this headset doodad,
Yep.
pops it on, And Manny's done the same behind the information point, which I should mention is only a few yards away.
It's spitting distance.
Yeah, it really is. Manny talks to Bernard through the headset, and Bernard shouts back, which not only badly hurts Manny's ears, but it also drives home the pointlessness of staff headsets in this tiny shop. Anyway, we once again, Steve, hear the scuttling of the bookstore vermin over in a corner, and Bernard very smoothly swings his leg up onto the desk and draws, without taking his eyes off the vermin corner, he delicately draws this throwing knife out of his boot, and he lets it fly, and he impales the book bug, and we hear it go and a death rattle. Anyway, this is all wonderful stuff. I love this. And he does it all with an unlit cigarette in his mouth, and he looks so cool. I hate to say, throwing knives with unlit cigarettes in your mouth in a bookshop is cool, but I can't help myself, dude. It's the epitome of cool.
You've just sent the younger generation off the rails, Jeff.
Oh, I think so.
I was disappointed that he had done away when Manny was doing the renovations.
Yeah.
The chalkboard, or the scoreboard, has gone. So, yeah.
Dude.
Bernard couldn't rack that one up with the chalk.
Oh.
It was a bit disappointing.
Right, we're going to circle back to this. Well done, Steve. I had not noticed, to be honest with you.
So we're going to keep score for them, are we?
Yeah, well, perhaps. Fran rushes in with this exciting news, right? So she's redone her family history properly now. Oh,
sure.
Yeah. She's discovered some relatives on the Eastern European side of her family. They've come to live nearby, right? So she's got them presumably within driving distance of her new Astra.
Just around the corner.
Yeah, just around the corner. So she's going to get to grips with them and this new cultural heritage she's got. She starts explaining how she tracked them down. And she says, "Stop me if this gets boring." And Bernard stops her almost immediately for being too boring. Anyway, Fran stomps out, literally, and she pauses on the way out to shout into Manny's headset, which Manny left at the information point, unattended. But Bernard's still wearing his. So this blows Bernard's ears out in a beautiful mirroring of the scene we saw earlier.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Fran stomps out the door, and she squishes a bookshop bug accidentally underfoot, which I thought was quite nice. And we might have a little clip.
Okay, wait for this. Oh, this is brilliant. I had another go at doing my family tree, and I found that I've got relatives from Eastern Europe living practically round the corner. I mean, is that news or what? It's amazing the way you put the jigsaw together. Now, well, stop me if this gets boring, but first you just check the parish records.
Stop.
Well, I don't care. Because I've got roots. I don't need you. Sorry to be such a bore! Now, if you'll excuse me, I am going to be with my people.
On to scene 5. Fran visits her newly found relatives. So we see her strolling up to her relative's house, and it immediately doesn't give a good impression because there's old shopping trolleys out the front and broken down wheelbarrows full of junk, and there's an old bath and a busted cooker. And she rings the doorbell, and Fran's greeted by this old lady that she calls Grandma later on. Anyway, Fran gets the very traditional Titch-Tayan kiss, which involves a bit of chin sucking.
It's not reciprocal, though.
No. Well, she hasn't got a
She's on the receiving end.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you don't think you've got to work on your technique before you
probably
start dispensing them?
Yeah, I reckon. So Fran joins them for some hot bean tea, which you mustn't hold with your right hand, Steve. So this family group, right, we've got Grandma. There's the oldest boy, Frederick, who's clearly a slick dude. We've got Martina and the giant slow-witted Gregor. Now, like inside their house, there's foods hanging up everywhere and little religious paintings adorn every wall, and there's relics everywhere and stuff like this. So it really does.
As far as saying icons?
Yeah, icons. Thank you. That's the one, not relics, because relics implies value.
Well, they didn't have a piece of the true cross.
No,
there did they?
I doubt it. So she's enjoying the novelty of this. Fran she's liking the new culture that she's connected to and learning all about it.
She's sucking it in. Straight
away, they ask Fran if she has a car, and we'll bring this up in Best Gags later on. So when she says yes, they go, oh, and then they start whispering plans amongst themselves and just leave Fran to her own devices with poor old Gregor. They do comment, though, that she's this massive success to have someone in their family who owns an Astra.
Oh. Imagine if she owned a Lamborghini or something like that.
Oh,
their minds would have been blown.
I reckon. But Fran takes this as a compliment. She can't see what's coming, so to speak. She's got no idea they're going to bleed her dry. Anyway, we go back to the shop for scene 6. Now, that bloke before, which I've called the cheapo negotiator,
yep,
from earlier, he's rushed back into the shop. He's clearly reached the end of the book to the point where Bernard ripped out the pages. And he's begging Bernard for the last part of the book, waving his 50p around, saying, I've got your 50p. Bernard just says, that'll be £20. No, £25. And the guy pays it. He's very annoyed, but he is addicted to this book. And now this is a gag, I think, that would fit nicely into sort of any episode of Black Books. So it's not connected to the plot in any way. I don't know what point I was making.
It does lead nicely into the next section, which is about customer service.
That's true. Yeah, fair point. All right.
Because Manny jumps right on him for this.
Yes, I'll go with you on that one, Steve. You're making my arguments for me here. This is fantastic. So yeah, after the customer exit, Manny does give Bernard a dressing down for contravening the customer code promise pledge, otherwise known as
the
CCPP.
The CCPP.
The CCPP. Yeah.
Jeez, I hadn't...
No, this is... Yeah, because he actually...
I hadn't appreciated the infantile humour in that.
Yeah.
Thanks for pointing it out to me.
Yeah, well, no worries. Manny does mention it. He goes, this is all part of the CCPP. Anyway, Bernard has no idea what on earth this is because he wasn't there when Manny created it. He starts to read it point by point. Just so he can familiarise himself with what the CCPP is. Anyway, he leads to this wonderful bit in which he tries smiling for the first time, and it's grotesque. And even Manny tells him to dial it down a bit. He goes, no, that's scary, bring it back a bit. All of this ends with a visual gag in which Bernard snaps a clipboard on Manny's nipple in an extremely painful way, and then Bernard gives himself a gold star. It's a brilliant scene, this. Anyway, but what I like is that...
Yeah,
sorry,
carry on,
Steve. Up into that point, Bernard's played along, right, to see where it goes. But now he's starting to... He's had enough. So what were you going to say?
Well, I thought that a CCPP might have had something to do with peeing in someone's fuel tank, but...
Yeah, that was remember that episode? When we did Trial and Error?
Yeah.
It's the East Peck Police Department PP, the EPPD.
But of course,
PP.
Then someone got an electric car.
Yeah.
And that spoiled the whole thing. Oh, no.
Fantastic. So we've just had Manny getting a clipboard on his nipple.
Ouch.
Moving onwards, we're back with the Tishtayan cousins in scene 7. So they're all enjoying bean tea together. Well, they are. I'm not sure if Fran's enjoying it, but Frederick, he very slickly and pleasantly asks Fran, what are you doing tomorrow, Fran? And she goes, oh, not much. And they ask if she can help Martina move into her new flat by shifting some things with the car. Now, obviously Fran wants to be nice. She wants to be helpful and fit in. So she says yes. And next thing you know, she's picking up hams from Folkestone. And I don't know how far Folkestone is from where they are, but quite a distance, I dare say.
No, but I can tell you that the medical appointment in Aberdeen, that's in the north of Scotland, I think.
Yeah. It'll just take a jiffy or 2 little jiffies, but we'll talk about that later.
2 jiffies.
Yeah. So we've got a whole bunch of rapid fire scenes here between shop and relatives' flat. So we're now back in the shop. Manny's negotiating with Bernard to get more stars. He wants more gold stars. Bernard's about to lose it at this point when all the customers suddenly leave the shop. After Bernard's just been complaining to Manny about, I don't like this new system, there's too many customers in the shop. But when they all leave, he's all upset. So he suddenly realises that although he hates this new system and he wants things back the traditionally empty and broke way, Bernard is desperate to get everyone back.
I'll have more to say about that later.
Oh, cool. And we've got a brilliant clip of this.
Where did they go? What did we do? Where did they go?
Well, it's 1:45. They went to get some food, I think.
We've got coffee. Is that not enough for them?
He said he wanted less people in the shop.
Don't twist my words.
He said he wanted less people in the shop.
We can't let them find reasons to leave. We can feed them lunch and dinner. And we'll build a pool and a gym and an Egyptian-style casino. No, that's a bit much. But the food, if they could eat, they'd stay and buy books all day long. From now on, Manny, we run a full restaurant service. Do your friends at Saga Books do that? Huh? I don't think so.
We can't run a restaurant.
Of course we can. Because from now on, The only stars we'll be looking at will be Dunlop stars.
Michelin stars.
Them as well.
Back with the cousins, we see Fran carrying the last armfuls of hams into the cousins' house while they all sit around playing cards. And so she sits down to rest, and they insist that tomorrow she drives Gregor to the hospital, as you said, Steve, in Aberdeen. And Fran comes up with this plausible excuse or two and says no. But essentially, Grandma threatens her. This is a really good scene. There are many cool, subtle things happening at work in this scene, timing-wise, and it's funny and menacing. And I know we've just heard a clip, but I think it's time for another clip.
I think I'll go home. Get to bed.
Yes, rest, Fran. Then on Saturday, you will take Gregor to the hospital. It's a little out of the way, this hospital. Aberdeen.
Oh, no, I can't.
Take a jiffy. Maybe 2 little jiffies.
I can't, because I'm giving a talk at the London School of Economics, and also I have to have a bath.
Let me explain, Fran. Any one member of the family is like this bean, but the family is tightly bound like this sausage. And if one member does not help the family, well... Saturday, you drive.
I've just noticed, Steve. Ooh,
Nice food segue there.
a parallel with long cylindrical heavy objects that can do a lot of damage. Far out. I'm sorry, dear listener, we've just cut to Bernard in his mad kitchen with a rolling pin, rolling out some pastry. Anyhow.
Which is a nice little parallel of the salami coming down.
Yeah.
Crashing down on the nut.
Yes, quite. Now, Chef Bernard, he's showing Manny the wonders of luxury pie. And we'll list the ingredients of that a little bit later on. Anyway, they're both pretty excited. They have no idea what they're doing, but I like it when those rare scenes when Manny and Bernard are getting along. I find it quite nice. Yeah. Anyway, the whole scene here is extremely rich with gags. Too many to go over here, but it's got amazing prop humour. There's heaps of energy and stupidity, but the 2 plot takeaways from the scene I am not describing is that, one, the food is attracting the book creature vermin and it's kind of fattening them up. So they're multiplying and they're getting more menacing. And secondly, Bernard wants to put candles in old wine bottles for the ambience. But, and I don't know how this is possible, they've got no empty wine bottles, but they've got plenty of full ones. So they're both necking 2 bottles of wine at once to empty the bottles to put candles in. You look like you've got something to say here, Steve. Have you suffered from this problem?
I think it might be deliberate.
Yeah. You
Just
mean
throwing
an
that out
excuse to...
Yeah.
Knowing Bernard, I bet it probably is. They've got a legit reason, finally. Yeah, so they...
It's a tax deduction.
Oh, yes. That's brilliant. Yeah, and Manny's an accountant, right? So he's got this all sorted as a tax deduction. Anyway, Bernard shoots a vermin with his mini crossbow to retrieve an onion that it was carrying away. And that's a beautiful gag, and it's all completely mad. Now, meanwhile, Fran has come back to the shop after visiting her cousins, and she's just been threatened. Anyway, she comes in to get advice. So Manny escorts her to the information point because he's about to dole out some information. Anyway, they're both now necking wine to empty some bottles and help them think of a plan to get her out of it. So we move forward in time now. They're round at the cousin's place. Fran walks in to enact whatever plan her and Manny came up with the night before. Or what I think is the night before. I don't know.
I suspect it's the same day that...
Okay, cool.
So Bernard's preparing dinner.
Right. And we can call this sort of 4 o'clock-ish, 5 o'clock-ish.
Yeah, evening.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
Something like that.
Cool. So, yes, she's gone back to their place. Now, Fran's plan becomes evident pretty quickly, right? So let's have a clip.
Fran! How's the car?
Never better. Ooh, tea. Oh, my right hand, how awful. Oh, I'll make it up to you by singing the Tishtaya national anthem. I've been practicing. Ha ha ha,
Oh, no, that's the Uzbekistan national anthem. It is the verse which mocks our country's nuclear power facilities.
Well, you'll have to disown me now, won't you?
People with Astras can drink with their right hand and sing whatever they like. That's how it's been for centuries.
So, we forgive you.
Yeah. Let's celebrate with a drive around town and an upslap meal. Huh?
Well, I don't think Astras have been around for centuries.
No. A bit of a flaw in
It
the
used to be
logic
horses.
there. Yeah.
Donkeys.
Aside from all that, yes, so the plan obviously is to offend them. This is quite often what you see in plots where someone's got a boyfriend and or girlfriend that they no longer want, so they don't want to dump them, so they want to be dumped by being offensive.
And she's got a bit of Dutch courage under her belt.
Oh yeah, from the wine. Mm.
Given the sausage threat, you've got to do something to steel yourself.
That's
what
true.
if it all goes wrong?
Yeah, and you get bashed. As we heard, though, she can't offend them enough to get them to disown her, so she needs a better plan. Now, Frederick, at the end of this, he mentions that, you can take us for a drive around town and an upslap meal. And so we're about to find out that she takes them to Bernard's new restaurant bookshop. And this is where, in a Seinfeldian way, perhaps a bit more clumsily, the plots converge.
Yes.
So, which brings us to scene 11, which I've put nighttime in the shop. Surely it is nighttime in the shop. This is Kitchen Chaos 101. I'm just going to do dot points here, Steve, because it's all ridiculous manic bullcrap that they do. So Bernard's chopping up jelly and custard with a meat cleaver, and there's plenty of this using the wrong equipment jokes. He insists that all gourmet food is presented in little towers, and he orders Manny to get that soup into a tower. Bernard then further insists that the sign of a good cook is burns on their hands. So he grabs Manny by the wrists, and he's got his cute little tiny saucepan, and then starts burning the heck out of poor old Manny's hands, and including his forehead as well. Bernard, having run out of plates, then serves some glop onto a recipe book cover which has a picture of a plate on it. And I've made a note that I'm surprised some wanky restaurants haven't actually done this yet.
Maybe they have.
Maybe they have. Right, so when Bernard finally gets some beautiful looking dishes against all odds and the laws of physics, including Manny's excellent tower of soup, he finds this tiny flaw in it, like not enough mint, and then he smashes it against the wall.
Oh, he goes full Gordon Ramsay here, doesn't he?
He does. And it's
absolutely
just
loses it.
The wrong garnish. And he throws all these meals across the room. No wonder he's run out of plates, right? Because he keeps smashing everything.
Yep.
And then Bernard screams for more ingredients, and Manny yells back that they've cooked them all. And Bernard's so manic at this stage, he claims he can cook anything and mixes bits of stove with old paint and his belt.
My stove can cook anything, including bits of stove.
That's a fantastic line. Anyway, I love that whole scene. And it fades out at this point and fades in sometime later with the activity all over. And poor old, Fran and Manny are just slumped over, but they've dragged some lounge chairs into the kitchen because I suppose all the kitchen table chairs are out in the dining area. Who knows? But anyway, he looks like he's holding court. So he's got his enormous, like the world's biggest glass of brandy and a cigarette.
You could pot a plant in that.
You could.
It's enormous.
It's on our cover artwork, so you'll see it. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's a truly massive vase of brandy, and he's claiming victory, saying, providing excellent food at great prices, it's not that hard. Immediately, Fran completely refutes this by saying, has everyone finished throwing up yet? And we hear the groans of sickness out in the bookstore/restaurant. All of Fran's cousins are sick with food poisoning. But she goes out to apologise to them and says, look, it's all my fault. I brought you here. I understand if you can't forgive me. But Grandma, even as sick as she is, she says that the bonds of third cousinhood can never be broken, and she tells Fran to drive them home. Now, if you've seen this episode, you'll know Fran very memorably excuses herself for a moment, and she grabs one of the table candles in the wine bottles and goes outside briefly, then comes straight back inside saying, oh no, something terrible's happened. And they all follow her out to see Fran's lovely Astra on fire. And as she stares into the fire, Fran starts giving this speech about, I know my family are going to pull together and stand behind me at this moment of horrible.
Yes, this crisis.
And they've all run off down the road.
Yeah.
And
problem solved. Well, one problem solved.
Well,
another potentially created.
True. There's another scene. I don't think they needed this scene, but scene 12 is the next day in the shop, and everything's back to normal, and the scoreboard is back on the thing, and
nice.
It's got lots and lots of more tally marks on it.
Mm-hmm.
Fran comes in. She wants a tenner to catch a cab, so she's off to some sort of day class just to keep her occupied. Bernard's saying he just likes having his bookshop back the way it was, and we finish with Manny, who traps a book vermin in the coffee machine jug with a bacon trap that he'd set, and he boils it with the steam, and the episode finishes with him claiming he's killed the Queen. So there you go.
Well done, Manny.
Yeah. So I've got a page of random notes here, Steve, but I'm exhausted. So what have you got? Do you need some glasses?
Hang on.
Yeah.
I'm putting on my Harry Potter spectacles here. So I've got a gag list, as you'd expect. I've got a comment list, like summary comments.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I look at you, I can't see a blinking thing, but I can see it. I can see perfectly on my notes. Just some other general comments as well. So I don't know where you want to go.
Have you got any things you noticed or details that aren't gags?
Well, I think we've actually talked about a lot of these. I did like that they left the creatures unexplained, or they didn't show them. So they left it up to your imagination, which I liked. And the scoreboard was good. I like the reference to selling Ulysses and the guide to Ulysses and some other thing to do with Ulysses.
The handbook to the guide.
I mean, they're really doing well if they can sell that that book. I tried it myself and I couldn't get through it.
No.
Yes, and then I think, I'll just go to the gags when you're ready.
Cool. The interaction with the smarmy customer. It's an absolute victory for anyone who's ever been in retail. Should we take the time to explain it, Steve? I don't know. I think we're duty bound to. Anyway, this customer, as we said, is trying to haggle the book down from £3 to £2.
But he's not doing it verbally. He's just going... he's
and moving his head from side to side and going... And Bernard's picking up on those cues and then takes the mickey out of him for it. Anyway, what happens is Bernard agrees to sell him the book for £2.50, but rips the last, so let's say, 30 pages out of this massive 900-page book. Yep. The dude comes back later on, says, I want the rest of the book, here's my 50p, and then Bernard charges him an awful lot of money for it. And then this is the topper. When he goes to hand these missing pages back to the customer, as the customer is reaching out to take it, Bernard sort of keeps his hand very firmly on it and then goes, and really hammers the message home to this customer. And I'm sure everyone just loves that revenge.
You like a good handing over gag, don't you?
Like the Ben Elton thing or the almost handing over? Is that what you mean? When I've said, here you are, young crone, here is a purse of money, which I'm not going to give to you.
That's the one.
And then I identified in Filthy Rich and Cat Flap where Filthy comes in and he says, I've brought you a bottle of wine. Beat. But I drunk it in a taxi, and then gives them the empty bottle.
Yep, it's the handing over when you're not really handing over.
Yeah. Sorry, yes. Anyway, that whole interaction with the smarmy customer, the two-parter, that's a brilliant, iconic gag, I think. And also, just, before I hand back over to you, Steve, the cousins, they just met Fran. They sit her down. They go, tell us about yourself, Fran. Pause. Do you have a car?
Yeah, like, they are as uninterested in Fran as Bernard and, well, let's just say Bernard was.
Yeah.
Just before she left the shop.
Yeah, I like
Despite being blood.
Yeah. And also, it'll take a jiffy, 2 little jiffies, Frederick says, the trip to Aberdeen.
And he does
Take a jiffy.
He does like the Wiggles.
Yes.
Finger pointing thing.
And they reminded me that a jiffy's an actual thing, Steve. In like computing terms, a jiffy is, X amount of things between one signal and another signal. And in physics, a jiffy can be between 1/50th and 1/60th of a nanosecond or something. And then
I always thought a jiffy was a firelight.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's what I thought. Anyway, I learned that on The Unbelievable Truth.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, David Mitchell. Even though he obviously was, being the host, wouldn't have told us this.
He wasn't doing the research for that.
Yeah, he just takes all the credit. Bloody David Mitchell.
Next you'll be telling me Nifty has other meanings.
Yeah, right. Just 2 little nifties. Yeah. What gags have you got?
Well, the problem is we've already talked about most of them.
Oh, okay, cool.
The genealogy fail, I think, our mother is a lover of genealogy, but she insists on it being done the right way, which is to her credit. So I find it funny that
Fran,
to think that you could find everything you need to research your family tree in black books.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's laughable.
As you'd expect, it turns out completely poorly.
I love it when Bernard spits at the mention of saga books.
Yep.
This reminds me of when you brought in Corner Gas, and every time someone mentions the neighbouring town Woollerton, everyone within earshot goes... It's just...
Or the famous Alas Smith and Jones gag about Effie the Burrow.
Yep.
I spear 28. Ping.
Yeah.
And of course it goes ping, ping, ping. Ricochets off about 3 different things.
There's a fine tradition of spitting in comedy, but I love those. And yeah, just whole Manny's inadvertent trip to saga books, I raved about that before. That's great. But Bill Bailey's expression on his face as he comes out of the bookstore and he pauses for a moment and he looks at his hands and all the stuff he's holding. He's thinking, how did I get here? But then... Like, brilliant acting. But then he just changes it, his expression, and goes, oh, who cares?
He's not
I'm a happy
displeased.
camper. Don't know where the paint went, but that's all right.
Yep. Well, it's given him this brilliant idea.
Yeah.
As well.
And the thing is the episode, because that's scene 2, and scene 1 opens with this incredibly sharp dialogue between Bernard and the customer, and then Bernard and Manny. Like, it's full-on witty, quick banter that's very intelligent and quick. And then you cut from that to a completely no dialogue scene. And that just shows the enormous range that these writers have achieved within the one episode. So you've got all this great prop comedy and other dialogue-free bits. Anyway, yes, I'll talk more about that later, but I just thought that little scene was great.
Yep.
More sight gags, Steve, while we're on that topic. So Bernard's doing his name badge, and he manages, because he's got the world's biggest marker and a tiny square of cardboard, and so he goes B-E-R, and then he runs out of room to put the end. And there's something brilliant about this. Like, Bernard is a highly literate person.
Yeah.
He is not a dumbass. He's extremely good with, writing and knowing books and all that, and yet he's worse than a child when it comes to making his own name badge, and then he's sticking little gold stars on it. And I just love the juxtaposition of the world's most literate man failing to be able to even get half of his name on a name badge.
Yep.
And it sets up a gag later on as well. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep, I like that.
And then, that's another no dialogue joke. And then he looks up after pondering his mistakes with his badge, and he sees the little girl being eaten by the couch with no dialogue at all, which again I'm raving about. And of course I raved about the cooking scenes as well. All of that.
I think that cooking scene is the strongest scene in it for sure.
It's fantastic, all of it.
I'd like to hear why you think this is the episode to nominate for the Hall of Fame, because it's not one. Like, if I was to nominate a second episode for Black Books for the Hall of Fame, I'd think about the episode where they accidentally drink the expensive wine.
Yep.
Or Bernard's Summer Girl episode, which is also the one where Fran's room
shrinks,
gets smaller.
With Johnny Vegas. Yeah.
Or the Little Book of Calm, or any number of these other ones. But this one isn't one I would have picked, so I'm interested in...
Yeah, or the one where they write the children's book, which is superb, but I didn't pick that one because Fran goes away with her girlfriends, and that's all a bit sad.
Yep. So I guess you're going to get around to telling us why this one. But
probably not.
I did have a bit of a think about... So I thought to myself, is this episode really bad compared to those other ones, or is it not? Anyway, so I've got some thoughts about that.
I think you've overthought it, especially when I reveal.
Have I?
Yeah. Well, no, possibly not. It's just because I think, as I mentioned earlier, we've got to episode 91, and I think I've got to the point in life now where I just think I just pick stuff I want to talk about, and I don't give a rat's if it gets into the Hall of Fame anymore. So... when I'm lacing in audio from old episodes and not providing a case, you can see where this is going. Do you need me to put my case then before you put your thing? Would that be helpful, or is it not going to be helpful? Should you
put your case, or should I tell you what some of the things I don't like about it?
Oh yeah, tell us some other things you don't like about it. This will be handy.
Okay, so the B plot, which is Fran and her family,
I
don't really find it that funny. Some people would probably find it troublesome.
Yep.
Because it's some kind of racial profiling or something like that. But that doesn't worry me so much. But it's just like I don't really find it that funny. I find the chin sucking kiss a bit cringy. So that was all a bit of as a B plot.
That didn't do it for you.
It doesn't. Well, I like the restaurants and all that sort of stuff. So that's right up there. But the B plot doesn't really match that. And then there's a few things a few beats that I think they might have missed.
Ooh.
Where I think there could have been another scene. Like it's not really explained how Fran gets the family from their place to the shop for dinner. I think there was like an extra gag that could have been in there where she thinks to herself, this dinner is going to be bloody awful.
Yeah.
Nothing I've thrown at these people
has worked.
Yeah, has worked. So I'm going to bring them to the shop where Bernard is going to give them food poisoning.
That would have been helpful, actually. I hadn't thought
because
of
they just kind of appear in the shop, in the restaurant, and it doesn't...
So, yeah, the link between Frederick saying, take us up for an upslap meal, and then them just appearing in the shop it's not a strong enough link as to how they got there. I'd agree with what you're saying there.
Because we don't even see Fran... I'm not entirely convinced there's a scene where Fran hears about this idea of...
The restaurant?
The restaurant. I'm unsure about that. I was just, as we were talking about it earlier, I was thinking, Bernard cooks paint.
Yeah.
So did Manny go back, make a second trip to the hardware shop?
I don't know. That's definitely a hole.
Because he went into Saga Books with paint. He came out
with no paint.
With no paint. So.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a slight covering there in that Manny did come out with a bag full of books, and maybe they said, would you like us, sir, to put your tins of paint in this bag with your books? And then he goes, thank you, that'd be lovely. And so therefore he still did have the paint.
That's
so
possible.
We can't unprove
That's plausible.
That. Yeah,
anyway, while I'm trying to apply logic to a show that has no logic, how do we go from Bernard hating the coffee shop?
Yep.
And, as we know, he doesn't like customers. How does he seems to turn on a dime from...
Yeah.
They leave, and you think he'd be happy about that, ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and says, no, we've got to keep these people here by
it's
opening
a masterful bit of...
Opening up a restaurant. It's like, what? What's going on?
You can either take it as completely inconsistent slackness, or you can take it as masterful character building, because he is a hypocrite. When these people are in my shop, I have control over them, and I can be rude to them. If there's no customers in here, I can't be rude to anybody. Like Basil hates people in his hotel, but if the hotel's empty, he wouldn't like it very much.
I buy that he's motivated by
cash and rudeness.
Not by cash. I don't think he is motivated by cash, but I think he's
liking
he's motivated by being able to be rude to customers. Yeah. I think he enjoys that.
Yeah.
But I don't think money does motivate Bernard. So that doesn't...
Yeah, I think he likes to give that impression, but, when you throw lots of money at people, I'm sure he likes it. There's no evidence of what I'm saying at all. Yeah. None. And every point you're making is actually very valid, Steve, so you're quite right.
And then... Oh, yes. So, as a final point in this rant, if the whole point of this dinner and lunch business is to keep the customers there and sell them books, who's selling the books to them? If all these guys are running around making fantastic dishes.
That is a flaw in the plan. Yeah, but Bernard, this is the thing, as I've said, he's manic. He doesn't, he's not thinking. He's just doing.
I think we can agree on that.
The whole thing was probably just to set up all the restaurant jokes.
Yep. The restaurant jokes are fantastic, but the more I watch it, the more I think, oh, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, what's your...
lack of justification.
Try and sell it to me.
Oh. All right, before we do anything else, let's list what's in Luxury Pie. Just because I went to the trouble of making the notes.
You've got the recipe there.
Waste them. Yeah. So, someone commented that this is the only thing that looks close to anything resembling food made by Bernard, as opposed to the stuff made by Manny. So it consists of lobster, caviar, truffles, champagne, and handfuls of saffron in a pie crust.
That would actually olive oil drizzled.
So over the top of the pie crust, yes, he brushes on some
bastes
lovely...
it with something.
Yeah.
But with a paintbrush.
Was it really?
With a paintbrush.
That's another brilliant detail. Well done, Steve.
He went back and he bought paintbrushes and tins of paint.
Well, Bernard is already an arrogant person, right, in every episode. But in this episode, he gets chef-level arrogant, which is another whole level for Bernard, and it's absolutely true. And I think the other reason it appealed to me is that, like, books are very library-esque, and I work in a library, and more specifically, I work in a part of the library where we do a lot of family history appointments. Yep. And so I suppose this episode just tickled me for the reasons you were saying about Fran looking up her genealogy.
Well, there you go.
And no disrespect to any of my lovely, brilliant customers, but when they are booking a family history appointment and then they start launching into the whole history, and they've thrown about 8 different names at me and 20 different dates at me, and I know this is going to go on for half an hour, I quite often find myself having to very diplomatically extract myself from these conversations. Yep. And so you'd like to book an appointment, would you, to see one of our... Yeah, anyway, so it's that's why this episode appealed to me, I think. But I think in general terms about... remember when I said that last scene wasn't needed? Yeah. And all you needed was Fran setting fire to her car and the relatives all strolling off. You could have just ended it there. And it occurred to me, and you're going to rip this a new one because it doesn't hold up. That last scene is a very open all hours final scene where you ruminate on the events of the day. So they're talking about the changes to the shop, and they're doing the stuff, and they get a final few gags in, and they wrap up the loose ends. And I think subconsciously that appealed to me in an open all hoursy type of way. And Black Book's also, as I've mentioned, Seinfeldianness twice. And it could be dead wrong, but Black Book's kind of, for me, mixes the retail aspect of open all hours with some attempts at plotting to the level of Seinfeld, but with the surreal comedy of, say, The Goodies or The Mighty Boosh. And so that's why I like it, because it takes all those aspects from all those other sitcoms I love and melds them together so well that I hadn't actually noticed they were melding them together. And, of course, you got Dylan Moran. He does Dylan Moran, and Bill Bailey does Bill Bailey. But I think when I was watching this one, I noticed how good an actress that Tamsin Greig is. Yep. And I just went, when she's with that family, and I did promise to talk about that family threat scene and why it's so good, but I think I won't bother because this is getting quite long. But Tamsin Greig's acting is just incredible. And I think it was this episode that I was watching when all these realizations came to me, and then throw in the family history stuff and the library thing, and I just went, oh, I'll pick this one. Yep. So yes, absolutely.
Well, you've explained it.
Oh,
you've explained the reasons why this one jumped out to you.
So what are your thoughts, Steve, even though you've already given them to us?
Yeah, well, I guess that's where I'll land with it. I wouldn't rate it in the top echelon of Black Book's episodes, but it's a hoot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the food scenes in particular, just hilarious. And as we're talking through it now, it's just cracking me up. So, yeah. It's worth a watch.
It absolutely is.
I wouldn't say it's 5 stars, but it's definitely, it's Black Books.
So with apologies to Andy Riley and Kevin Cecil, and Dylan Moran probably as well, even though he's got his fair share of praise, so stuff him. Yes, this isn't going into the Hall of Fame, but geez, I've had fun talking about it, and you've brought up some great points, Steve, so thanks for indulging me with this one.
Oh, no, thanks for bringing it along. I always love a Black Books episode. Yeah. And, yes, thanks for joining us, listeners. We'll see you in a month or so.
Yes, ta-ta.
Bye.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.